How China is getting rich because of Russia? How much can China help Russia as its economy falls apart, and will it? How Ukraine's losses will become China's gains? What consequences could China face on foreign policy? Want to know more? Let's find out. Hey folks, welcome back to Studying Scholar. In this video, we are going to find out how China will become the richest in the world because of Putin, and let us dive in. The ongoing crisis in Ukraine will have major consequences on China's foreign policy objectives in the Indo-Pacific region. It will encourage the deepening of economic cooperation between the Russian and Chinese governments, which will make both nations more resistant to the economic pressure coming from the West. The United States is devoting a substantial amount of its financial and military resources to helping Ukraine, which will make it extremely challenging for the United States to increase its presence in the Pacific in the years to come, as a result of long-term instability in Europe. The conflict has shown that the West is unable to put sanctions on a major economy without endangering its own level of stability. The conflict has also demonstrated how robust the Russian nuclear deterrent is, which makes it impossible to imagine even a limited intervention from the West. The situation in Ukraine will give advantages to many countries, but more to Xi Jinping. But this isn't reflected in China's political discourse, which has been carefully timed to prevent any big confrontation with the European Union and other industrialized countries, while simultaneously keeping a tight working relationship with Russia. The official viewpoint has not changed, since it was stated by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in February 2022 at the beginning of the conflict, that the country is worried about the violence and wants it to stop. It upholds the principle that the territorial sovereignty and security interests of all parties must be respected in order to move forward. Additionally, China continues to argue that the crisis was brought on in part by the expansion of NATO. On the front of economics, China has made the most of the huge strategic opportunities that the war has presented it. The volume of trade conducted between Russia and China experienced a 25.9% growth over the first 4 months of 2022. The number of goods that Russia shipped to its partner country increased by 37.8%, reaching $30.85 billion in US dollars. The actual volume of natural gas exported also increased by 15% over this time period. It is likely that Russia's primary economic partner will soon be China rather than the European Union. The Chinese ambassador to Russia, Zhang Hanhui, recently issued a call to action to Chinese merchants, urging them to fill the hole in the Russian market caused by the departure of Western companies. Despite the ongoing conflict, Russia's government budget was in surplus between January and April of 2022, thanks in part to its partnership. As it presses forward in Ukraine, it appears that Russia's objective is to do everything it can to keep the financial and economic status quo stable. It is anticipated that by the year 2023, the majority, if not all, bilateral trade will be settled in the renminbi. It is highly possible that Chinese enterprises and brands will control substantial portions of the consumer market in Russia, and that the country will become Russia's primary partner in the industrial and technology sectors. There is also a rising tendency toward the use of the renminbi as the primary medium of exchange for a significant portion of Russia's trade with third nations. China will be in a position to acquire a significant amount of strategic commodities once the construction of the logistical infrastructure is completed as planned. Because Russia would be cut off from many other markets and China will be using its own currency, China will be able to purchase these goods at considerable discounts, giving it an advantage over other buyers. Because of this, the ability of the West to use economic pressure points against China will be considerably diminished. Because secondary sanctions may have an effect on their operations in international markets, some of China's leading global corporations are making it more obvious that they are decreasing their involvement in Russia. However, collaboration in many sectors will be surpassed by firms of a lower tier that have either little or no global exposure. These kinds of businesses will still possess the necessary resources to compete in the Russian market. As is the case in Iran, their operations will be serviced by specialized banks that do not have exposure in Western countries. This development, along with profound internal changes in the political economy of Russia, will make Russia virtually immune to the effects of economic warfare from a strategic point of view. The United States and its allies in Europe will have little choice but to resort to expensive military alternatives in the foreseeable future if they want to stop Russia's expansionist policies in Europe. As a consequence of this, China will be presented with significant strategic prospects in the Pacific. It is too soon, and the available statistics are not sufficient enough to provide an accurate assessment of the military lessons that the war has provided for China. An unprecedented level of propaganda and misinformation is being spread by all parties involved with the conflict in Ukraine, which is one of the characteristics of the conflict. Two things, however, have been abundantly evident throughout the course of the war. To begin with, the United States and its partners in NATO will always want to avoid coming into direct military conflict with a significant nuclear state, even in the event that a major power is waging war just at its front door. Second, the economic war that has been waged against Russia has resulted in considerable issues for the economies of the Western world, including rising inflationary pressures and falling growth rates. Any moves of a similar nature taken against China, which has an economy that is 10 times larger, will wreak havoc on a significant portion of the global economy. Because of this, taking such a step is exceedingly unlikely. How is China helping Russia in its economy crumble? Sanctions, asset freezes, and international company withdrawals are pounding the Russian economy in reaction to President Vladimir Putin's military assault on Ukraine, providing Moscow with only one partner big enough to rely on for potential support: China. I think that our alliance with China will still allow us to keep the cooperation we've made, and not just keep it, but also grow it, said Russian Finance Minister Anton Silyanov previously. He said this at a time when Western markets are closing. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor for the U.S., said in response that Beijing had been warned that there will definitely be consequences for large-scale efforts to avoid sanctions or help to Russia to fill them. Silyanov has been talking about how the U.S. had put a freeze on almost half of Russia's central bank reserves, or $300 billion of the $640 billion in gold and foreign currency that Russia had saved up since a previous round of Western sanctions in 2014 after it took over Ukraine's Crimea. The remaining reserves are made up of gold and the Chinese yuan. This makes China Moscow's main possible source of foreign exchange to support the falling ruble in the face of huge outflows of capital. How much could China help ease Russia's economic crisis? If China decided to open up a full swap line with Russia and accept rubles as payment for anything it needed to buy, including important imports like technology parts and semiconductors that Moscow can't get because of the latest round of sanctions, China could basically fix most of the holes that the West has made in Russia's economy. But it's not clear if it's in Beijing's best interest to do that and how much it could go wrong. According to Maximilian Hess, a Central Asia fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, who was interviewed by CNBC, they could aid them a ton in terms of the degree to which China could assist Russia. But if they did that, they would risk big trade and sanctions wars with the US and the West, as well as big sanctions that would hurt them. Still, Beijing has been friends with Russia for a long time and can use this to its advantage. Even before the invasion, Beijing and Moscow said they would work together in a no-limit strategic partnership to counter US influence. China's position has been that the conflict is caused by the US and NATO's move to the east. On March 7, China's Foreign Minister Wang called Russia the most important strategic partner for his country. Wang said from Beijing, "No matter how dangerous the international situation is, we will keep our strategic focus and work for the growth of an extensive China-Russia partnership in the new era." But here the main questions lie. Why does unbalancing the strategic triangle strike a blow against China? How have U.S. relations in the Indo-Pacific been reshaped? How have Sino-Russian relations been affected by the war? And that brings us to the end of the video. Feel free to let us know what you think about this video. And if you like this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for all things. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.